If I can get you working on high value, high energy activities, your business will just grow naturally.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey there. Welcome to the Small Business Black Holes podcast with Alan Pence, where we help you navigate today's chaos with precision. Your host, Alan Pence, has 25 years of experience working in business and government, and he knows how the old rules have fallen apart. Each episode, we'll explore how to thrive in this new landscape by mastering the small business black holes while everyone else is still figuring them out. Let's dive in.
All right, we are back. What are we going to be talking about?
Well, we're going to tell you, you've been working hard. We've been talking about the tools that you're developing with Owner Institute, all right? You've been putting some time and thought into what this is going to look like. So I'd like to know more about the tools because I know this is a bit of a pivot.
Yeah. And I don't want this to be a commercial. I want this to be helpful for people. But, I think what I can say is where it comes from is kind of looking at the way owners approach planning across a lot of different methodologies. I kind of decided there are a couple of gaps that I see. And these are things that owners should really think through at some point, as early on as possible, right? But if not right away, down the road, you've got to start thinking about two aspects of the business for you. And I think this pod is a little bit more just about what is the owners trying to get out of this business. And I think a lot of times our language is around the business and how to optimize the business, which is fine, right? Of course you should do that. And in some objective way, right? And a lot of our thinking around business has been shaped by first public companies. And so with public companies, it's clear that there's a set of shareholders and they are usually passive owners mostly, with some exceptions. And then they're not looking for the business to do anything but make money. So you have options. You can be a growth company and not pay out dividends. You can producing more and more cash flow, or you can be like a dividend-based company where you're paying income out to shareholders. And you clearly have a strategy. The shareholders endorse that strategy. I mean, they do vote for annual meetings, but they endorse it by owning the stock or selling it. And so that shaped some of our thinking. And then you think about venture capital funding, again, or private equity, which is more like buying regular businesses. And in both cases, they're working for a set of investors who are passive owners. So usually institutional funds like teachers, unions, and pension funds, and sovereign wealth funds, and things like that. So again, they're not really interested in the business doing anything but supporting their long-term passive funding goals, which is securing a return for the endowment, paying out money to different people, whatever that goal is. So again, I think most of our business literature has been shaped around optimizing the business in order to pay essentially passive shareholders. And so that changes how you operate, because the only goal is to meet the standards set by the industry or by Wall Street or by best practices in an MBA program or finance professors and things like that, right? So now when you own a small, closely held business, that's not the case 100%. Now, of course, you want to optimize your business. You want to use best practices because they've been proven to build returns for shareholders, and you're the shareholder or a shareholder, a major one, and you want that. So of course you're using best practices from industry. But there is a nuance here where you're also an individual who lives a life with a family or whatever, and you want the business to also support your life. And so, yeah, when you go buy Apple stock, you're not having a conversation with Tim Cook about the kind of vacations you want to take, right? Or what you want to do with your children, or how you want to spend time playing golf versus doing that, right? So that's not happening when you buy Apple stock. You're just kind of doing that on your own, and then you invest in things to support that. And so I think we at Owner Institute are really trying to think through, what is it that makes owning a small, closely held kind of regular business. And, this applies to venture too. Like, I do think that a venture CEO needs to probably spend a little more time thinking about his or her own goals rather than just the investor's goals all the time, right? And it's certainly stay focused on them. I'm not telling you they don't matter, but you got to think about your own life too and like what you're doing this for, because you can get sucked into this machine of marketing from VCs telling you got to do this and that and the other thing that all serves them but doesn't serve you. So I think definitely venture capitalists and founders should be thinking through these issues as well. The other aspect of this is a lot of venture capital CEOs, founders are, well, it's not true, but the reputational thing is that they're younger. And so I think when you're 25 starting a company, you just want to make some money and like be cool and do great stuff and learn, right? Which is totally the way it should be. And I'm not saying you should be some different kind of person, but like when you're 50, you have other goals in your life that you've got to pay attention to. You probably have other relationships you have to pay attention to. You've only got so many years left. So you've got a much more defined universe of what you're looking at, right? So we've been looking at a couple of things at Owners Institute. The first is we're implementing a personal vision element of the offering. So yeah, we go through business strategy and finance and sales and all those operations and people, team, all those key business factors. Those are universal. But we want you to also think through your personal vision. And that's harder for a lot of founders and owners because they spend so much time on the business cycling through trying to go, I need more sales. I need to do this. I need to hire that person. They never stop and think like, what is this all for? And in some cases, we are impetuous, a quick start, in the words of Colby people. And so we kind of get into business maybe for reasons that are subconscious, or like we have an authority problem, which might be a problem for me, right? And so like basically I got into business because, well, I told that story. I got into business because I wanted to get the phone I wanted because I had a crappy phone in my last real job. And yeah, these were not well thought out plans when I started my business. It was just sort of like, I knew I wanted to do it. I had an instinct. I just did it. And it took me years to kind of like figure out what is this business for? So, you have options, right? And it's like, hey, I can run this business to be hyperscale growth while I'm raising 2-3 kids and have a wife that works or doesn't work. Or if you're a woman, have a husband, or if you're whoever it is, no judgment here. So you can do that, but you're paying a price in your personal life. Now, I sort of unconsciously chose to not work quite as hard in the business when I was a little younger and my kids were younger, right? And so we didn't grow as fast. I didn't learn as quickly. And so there were some years where we were stuck, where part of it was like my lack of knowledge, but also was like I was making a default choice. I don't think I was really front and center in mind that like I was going to be home and spend time with my kids and the family during that period. And now, and then as the kids got a little older, there was more time. My wife needed less support at home. And so there was more time to focus on the business. Now, part of our system is like, as the business grows, we're trying to bring down the commitment of the owner and time. But it is true that like, look, if I wanted my business that I was running to be 100, 200, $300 million, I would have had to been working 60 plus hours a week all the time. And I'd have to be out there figuring out what companies to buy, talking to the right investors, talking to these people, talking to the, and I chose not to do that. I don't want to do that. So one vision could be like, I want to own a really big freaking company and I want it to go to the moon. And I'm willing to do what I need to do. And part of the personal vision thing is helping you understand, as I said last week, on the soul, trade-offs, right? There are no solutions. There are only trade-offs. So part of what I'm telling those people, part of the personal vision aspect is to understand what trade-off you're making when you choose X or Y or Z path. And there are all sorts of paths, right? So your personal vision can be like, I want to grow this thing and sell it within 5 years, whatever. Okay, that leads to a series of then business strategy decisions, okay? Because I want to sell it because I want to go live in Monaco with my girlfriend and then I'll have kids and figure stuff out. Or there are a lot of owners who have a personal vision that is like, hey, look, I want to have a really good place to work. I want to make good money that I can take home. I'm building wealth on the side, but I want a reasonable growth path. And I want, that maybe 20 years down the road, I'll sell my company, but I'm not looking at doing that now. I want it to support a lifestyle where I can play golf on Fridays. I can take vacations in this way, right? I'm home and able to see my kids' sports games or home for dinner. If you're on that 5-year growth path to get to over $100 million, I do not think you're going to be home for dinner all that often. So we really want people to intentionally choose. And we're not saying one strategy is better than another strategy. We're just saying intentionally choose which one you're going to adopt. And so we have some exercise. I've been working on these exercises. Some actually I'm in YPO, and I did a forum this week where we did a visualization exercise where you thought about your older self at if you're 50, 30 years down the road. If you're 20, you got 50 years down the road. And we actually gave a name to the person as a separate kind of identity of me at 80. And then my name was Chico, by the way, when I was 80. So, and I played dominoes all day. Chico.
Oh, Chico.
Chico, yeah. I was in Miami, so I think I was kind of swept away in the Cuban, Venezuelan, Latin vibe going on. So, so that's a way. And the question was like, what advice would that person give to you today from this longer perspective, right? So they're probably not going to be as worried about the day to day. They're probably not going to be as worried about the bad decisions she made. They're probably just like, hey, go live your life. Like, it's going to work out. Go take the chances, do what you think you're going to do. That's probably what your older self's going to tell you, right? So that's a really helpful thing to set up personal vision. And then, and I think there are different kinds of people out there, right? So there are some people who are very visual. There's some people who are need to talk like me. There's some people that are kinesthetic, right? They need to move around. Some people that need to draw, So I think we're building exercises for every type of owner and how they process and think about the future. And there's some owners, are afraid of the future. And so they don't want to think about it, right? And I think that's a big challenge too. Like, we've got to think through how to help people really get out of the space they're in and get into this other space and say, what do you want? And to be honest, personal vision is about 30 years down the road, but it's also about how do you want to live this year and next year and 5 years from now.
10 years.
Yeah, 10 years, right? So obviously that's not going to stay static forever. Your personal vision is going to change. So we're recommending that almost every year, before you go into an annual business planning session, you revisit the personal vision. Because really what needs to happen, and I think the most sophisticated companies that I've seen that are closely held by an owner or a couple owners, they have that personal vision, and then they do the business strategy. So the business strategy is there to support the vision of the owners. It is not there just to optimize whatever type of business they're in. And I think that's a key differentiation that Owner Institute's really going to focus on. And so we're going to be putting out a bunch of tools you can use yourself, think through, and help you kind of do that long-term visioning, but also I don't want it to be all long-term because you live now and you can get hit by a truck. So don't push everything off till you're Chico, right? Chico's ability to travel is going to be limited, Chico's mostly interested in playing dominoes and drinking his Metamucil. So, I think part of it is going to be how is this business operating in your life right now? How does that serve you? How does it not serve you? How do we start with a personal vision and then shape the business from there?
A question, Alan. What if somebody's vision isn't changing? Is that a sign of, would that say something to you or to the business owner themselves? How would this help them?
I would say if they're doing the exercises and thinking through how they want to live now, 5 years, 30, their older self, and they don't find it changing year to year, then I think you're great, right? I mean, maybe you have a lack of imagination. I don't know, but that's your right. If you have a lack of imagination, then imagining things doesn't help you, right? So yeah, no, I think that's fine. I think that probably shows most likely the person dialed in on what they want and they figured out how to get a personal vision without doing our exercises, right? And that's great. Love it. I probably want to ask them, how did you develop that so I can help other people do it, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so that's one of the key tools. And then the other one that I've been working on, or that I found with a couple of people early on, is kind of a 2x2 matrix. Like I'm a classic consultant. Everything's a 2x2. So I really like to look at not just the vision, but like what the owner gets energy from, right? So there are things in your business that like drain energy, and there are things that give energy, right? And so tasks and things, activities in the business.
Energy vampires versus the things that are going to move them forward.
That's right. So I kind of do a 2x2 where it's like things that drain energy and things that give energy for the owner, specific to that person. And then I like to look at it by two different other factors, right? So one is like, how time consuming are these activities? And so obviously that goal is to get rid of the very time consuming, energy draining stuff. That's the first things we want to outsource, right?
That's the obvious, right?
Right, exactly. And then there's, like obviously you want to spend more time on the high energy stuff. But then the other thing is I like to then take out time and put in high and low value for the business, right? So you want to be in the high value, high energy category. That most likely is the thing that drives the growth of the business. And so we need to identify what those activities are. And that's what we need to focus on. Your personal plan within your role within the business needs to be focused on how do we do more high value, high energy activities. We have to cover high value, low energy draining activities. That's where we're probably going to have to spend the most money. Because it's high value, you got to get it done. You got to get it done right. And you don't want to do it. It's sucking from you. So now we got to go pay some money to plug that hole. And then there's the low value stuff we don't care as much about. We're going to give that to like an admin or a virtual assistant or whatever, depending on the activity, what we can do. Go get like outsourced CPA or bookkeepers or something if it's accounting, right? But that's more commodified. It's not that important. But the key decisions are like somewhat time, but I really think the value thing is the money exercise. It's like, if I can get you, I almost can guarantee, if I can get you working on high value, high energy activities, your business will just grow naturally, right? And as long as we're taking care of, because I think what happens is owners do that. They go for the high value, high energy stuff, but it starts breaking the draining high value stuff. So for instance, I sell a lot, but I don't love hiring new people to serve customers. Like that sucks. It's like interviewing people, managing them, blah, blah, blah. I don't like that, right? So that might be a dichotomy. Obviously, the more you sell, the more you're stressing the system. So it's really high value to hire the right people and have them serve customers in the correct way, right? So maybe that's where you're going to go need to, like, if you're going to spend a lot of time high value, high energy, that high energy has, energy creates energy, right? So you're like creating more and more. It's like a very positive feedback loop, which usually gets broken by the low energy suck, high value stuff, right? So let's go now talk about your plan to hire high-end recruiter or a high-end operations manager who can oversee, your customer service, satisfaction, operations process, right? So those are kind of like the two things that I've been playing with that I really think are going to distinguish us from others. Like this focus on making sure the business is aligned to the vision of the owner, not the other way around. And making sure the owner is in the most positive role possible and understanding the implications of that to help other parts of the business keep up. So my goal is, like, if you're an awesome salesperson, I do not want to make you a better customer service rep, right? I want to make you a better salesperson and then figure out how to cover the other stuff, right? So play, strength to strength rather than try to strengthen a weakness. Yeah, so those are a couple of new things that I've been thinking about. I think, really helpful. I think any owner can spend an hour thinking about what they're really trying to get out of this business and is it serving them on that path?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think back, Alan, like with your business experience, like what Can you think back what having a tool like this would have done? Like, do you remember what your energy vampires were, but what also gave you high energy, what high value was?
Yeah, to be honest, Tonya, I think I might have exited my company much earlier if I had done this, because I think what really I've been learning too, like just in this experience with doing Owners Institute, I really love building the framework of a business. So like for me, this is all about, hey, I went and learned a bunch of stuff about business, small business, operating small businesses. I spent years going to education, all sorts of stuff in EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, Young Presidents Organization.
Yeah.
I've been to like different entrepreneurial boot camp. I've been to all these things, right? And I'm like a sponge, and I've read all these books, and I've watched hours of YouTube and listened to podcasts, right? And a lot of it isn't all that valuable. It's kind of retread stuff. But every once in a while you get this nugget. You're like, oh my God, that's part of it, right? All right, let me put that in the chest.
You can write that down.
And so like, I love taking all that stuff and turning it into a system. And now what we're trying to do is turn it into software. There's going to be services with it, but like really having like a software tool. This is why, like, if you listened last week, I talk about wasting your money on building software. I'm about to try to do that again, but hopefully with a little more knowledge and some other. This is the good part about joining communities like Owner Institute will do, is like, I'm talking to my friends who have built SaaS businesses. I'm going to try to put them on my board. I'm going to have a lot more people who have done the kind of work. So like, I'm looking for the SaaS guy and gal who's the me of SaaS, right? I'm the me of like building regular mainstream businesses. And I want the SaaS person to tell me how to do that. How do I get all your lessons, right? So I don't do a bunch of stupid stuff.
Right.
So for me, this whole thing of like learning, turning it into a system and launching that and then optimizing it as I have people use it, that is like the most exciting thing. It gets my brain power, like high energy, high value. I'm right in that zone, right?
Right.
Now, me trying to get EIN, Tonya, high value for now, because I can't charge anybody anything without my goddamn EIN because I don't have my bank account.
Right. That's like sticking
But
black
like,
dry. Black.
Energy drain. And the IRS website is killing me right now because they won't disapprove it. So anyway, I'm working with our accountants. But like that I hate, right? And then like I've had several of those come up because there's, it's like you and me and like the wall basically right now. So
That's right.
yeah. So like I'm with you guys at the smaller level. I'm there right now, right? It's on the new business. So yeah. So I think I would have, so going back to the original question, I think I really I was in government consulting, which is a great profession. I mean, it's going through some stuff right now, but it just isn't the most innovative place where people want to buy stuff like that, right? They tend to want, maybe that's changing now, hopefully. Maybe that's part of what's going on.
Yeah.
But I just felt, and I don't want to make excuses. I think there's certainly people who have done it and can bring that kind of innovation to that market. I just felt like it really wasn't rewarded very much. And so like you have to kind of grow your company in a way that the industry standard has it. And if you choose to go a different path, it's just like you're fighting the whole system, right? And like people like Anduril and stuff like that have talked about it. And look, I think there are ways to do it. And Anduril came in with tons of money, tons of connections, lobbyists, that's the way you got to do it in this system. You can't just like kind of bootstrap that. And so I think I would have like set up my company, either sold it, maybe brought in someone much earlier to run it, because really my framework of the way I operate does not serve that kind of company very well, right? Like I would not be a great real estate guy. Like just sitting around and I mean, look, I love it. And I love it for like 10 minutes when I'm learning about the models and how the industry works and, oh yeah, you do this and that. But in reality, it's like a commodity business, right? It's like, that's not where my brain power goes. Other people are great at that stuff, right? So I think it's a great question. And I think personally, it would have changed the trajectory of my career, definitely. And look, I could have gotten there 10 years earlier. So that's kind of a tragedy, and it's like, I mean, not, look, I've done great. As I said earlier, like I had a business, I was able to raise my family, I have awesome kids and great wife, and like I live in a great community. And so don't cry any tears for me. But I think I could have realized 10 years earlier that like, hey, look, this is not really a good match for you. And you need to start figuring out how to structure the company. Now, I couldn't have just walked out the door. This is part of Honor Institute. Can't just be like, hey, you know what my thing is? I want to turn the keys over to some guy or gal, in my case, a gal, and like go play golf, right? Or do whatever. Or for me, like I want to go start another company. Like the company was not able to do that at that point. So it took several years of trying to get it.
And perhaps you could have done this, you could have done that earlier, right? That would have happened earlier.
Yeah. And I think if I had learned all the lessons already that I'm trying to get out there with Honor Institute, I could have short-circuited that process to a year or two, right? Not 5, 7 years of getting the company where it needed to be. And plus I was, at the same time, I was sort of like ambivalent. I'm like, well, maybe I should want to do this. I mean, it is the most like I had this thing in my head where like every hour I spent, was it more valuable in a company like where I already had a company, I already had experience and I was already operating, or was it in like starting something new? And I think from a very MBA analysis standpoint, you might really say, well, of course, it's in the business you already have, because like you've already got this engine. And if you just do a little bit more with it, it will produce more than starting a new engine. But the reality is, if you're not getting energy from that, you're killing yourself trying to do this thing. You're trying to do customer service when you're a salesperson, right? Or operations.
But did you feel that way then? Back then, did you feel that the value was in what you were doing at the time? Are you saying that looking back?
No, I'm saying I didn't ask myself the question in that way. I only looked at it from like an MBA standpoint, which is like, what is the optimal financial decision right now? You know, nor did I have a vision in my head of how a business could be independent. I think to me at that point, it was like, either I have to sell this and I don't think it's in the right place to be sold, or I have to just try harder and put my nose to the grindstone. I thought those were the only two choices. And so I think the really cool thing about it, what I'm trying to do now, is tell people, hey, look, there are a lot more choices. Like, I'm not giving you some panacea that you're going to walk out the door and do whatever you want the next day. But like, I'm giving you a path that if you do the work, you will get to the vision you want. But the first step is knowing what vision you want and working toward it. And also understanding that, look, we're not inventing a completely new way to run businesses here, right? The path we're taking will make the business, will optimize the business and make it more valuable. So even if your vision changes over time, business is still going to serve it. We're just giving you more optionality in the future. We're making your business more valuable. And by reducing the level of dependence on you, we're making it more valuable, sometimes 50% more, 20 to 50% more, or even more. And we're giving you optionality that we're now turning it into a system with all these attributes to it. So now it's easier to bring other people in to run it for you. So you can spend less time on it. You can bring in a professional management team. You can sell it, sell part of it, whatever. Then now you have options. Whereas when it's all dependent on you, you know.
And having this all in one place, right? Bringing this all together in one place.
Right. So for me, it was like hunting and pecking, and like you find one aspect of it, but it's not fully. I mean, I think one thing about me is like I talk about Colby, which is a personality test. Like I've taken a bunch of them. I like Colby right now. I'll probably like another one
next
month
week
from now. But they have this thing about like the two things I score really high on are quick start. So I do things very quickly, but I'm a really high fact finder. So like for me, I want to go do the research and figure out what's the best way to do something. And then I go do it really quickly. So that's what I'm trying to do here is I'm like, I just started this company. I'm making it happen. But it's after this long period of time where I've thought through what is the art and science of growing a closely held business in the United States, right? Or anywhere, to be honest, but I live in the United States, in the modern world. So. And I think I've put probably more brain power into the system of that than most people have, right? Because I'm a high fact finder. I need to crack the code. And that's what Honor Institute is. And like, I think we've cracked large parts of the code. I mean, it'll never be 100% cracked and the code will keep changing. So we need to keep updating how we look at it. But that's sort of the mission.
Yeah, I think it's great and it's exciting.
Yeah. So I think that's good for this week, right? Like we're trying to keep it a little shorter. Seems like people can listen through it. If you have any feedback, leave some comments on YouTube. Smash that like button. Come visit Owner Institute. I have a newsletter there if you aren't signed up at ownerinstitute.com. I write every week about some aspect of this, and we're really trying to build this into a community that helps support, people like you own and run businesses out there. So excellent. Well, until next week,
All right.
enjoy.
You too. Talk soon.
You've been listening to the Small Business Black Holes podcast with Alan Pence. For more insights on mastering the new game, follow @apent, that's APENTZ on X, and make sure to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, in today's world, you don't follow the rules, you write them.